All right, welcome everyone. Thanks so much for joining me. My name's Colleen Withers. I'm a director in the Career Center. I manage the career development team, and I'm also in charge of cross-campus integration. So super excited to have you all here today. And we are covering the LinkedIn and job search strategy. So these are some tips and tricks that we provide to students when we do these sessions, but also wanted to share the information up with all of you. So, as I'm sure you all know, 80% of recruiters use LinkedIn on a regular basis. I can say that prior to coming to Santa Clara, I was a recruiter. And so I did have what was called a recruiter, LinkedIn Recruiter Lite package. So for those of you that don't know, the recruiters out there, they do pay to have special searching capabilities within LinkedIn. And one of those packages is called LinkedIn Lite or something like that, LinkedIn Recruiter Lite. So I did utilize that feature from that perspective. It gives them a certain number of searches, a whole background sort of ATS application. So it is obviously needed for all of our students to not only have a resume, but also a LinkedIn profile. So wanted to talk through some of the different pieces on the LinkedIn profile that's very important, and then also tips on how to search for jobs using it. So obviously these days, a lot of companies also post their jobs on LinkedIn. I would say one side note is that for smaller companies, you do have to pay for posting. So sometimes they may only post like 3 at a time. There's a certain bundle that they pay for. So keeping that in mind as well, that if it's a smaller or even a mid-sized company, always taking a look at the company website. Not all jobs might be posted on their LinkedIn. So a couple quick things about the LinkedIn profile versus the resume. So some of our students still love to put that picture on the resume. That's definitely what we do not recommend due to applicant tracking systems. A lot of times if an image is on a resume, then that will spit them out and they won't even have applied when they think they did. So keep the pictures and the banner images to the LinkedIn profile. It's a really great place to showcase a little bit about yourself, especially that banner image behind the picture. I will be going directly to my LinkedIn in a little bit too, so I can highlight a few of these things, but good to remember to do that. The summary section is a great option. I always point that out to students. It enables you to use your first person narrative to talk a little bit about you. And that's not an option on a resume. So I think the use of LinkedIn and specifically that summary section, which is called the about section, is really a great option. As well, active links. So we also do not recommend on a resume that you put any type of active links, but on LinkedIn, you definitely can. So we always recommend to students, if there's a group project that they can add to their LinkedIn profile, or any type of graphics that they made or something like that, definitely putting those active links on LinkedIn is what we would recommend. These are a couple real fun ideas if you're working with a student and want to help them with their picture. The tools are really just, face forward, most of the face. Don't cut off someone's arm, don't have a dog in the photo with you. That you really just want your face. It is highly recommended that you do have the picture and you have the picture public, so that when someone is trying to find you, especially if you met them at a career fair or something like that, if that recruiter is trying to find the student, having the picture as a public display is highly recommended so that they can find you much easier and facilitate a discussion. The headline is what is right under the picture. So that frequently is just student at Santa Clara University, because that's kind of what auto fills when someone is doing a pretty basic profile. And we really recommend that you utilize that headline space. It is something that is the AI behind LinkedIn. It really picks up on that headline. So thinking about what the student wants to do. So thinking about the job title that they are looking for. In this instance, I put as an example an aspiring data analyst. So the AI behind LinkedIn does not pick up on the word aspiring, it only picks up on data analyst. So in that case, when a recruiter is doing a search for data analysts who went to Santa Clara, the student will come up in that feed, even if they don't actually have the title of data analyst anywhere in their experience section. So it is a great way in that headline to put yourself into the bucket of people for the job that you want next, even if you don't already have it, but you've got the coursework and you've got some projects and things like that to really back it up. So that's a great trick as well. So the about section, as I mentioned, is also a great place to use your first person narrative and really speak to what you're interested in doing. So when I have appointments with students, I try to think with them through not only what job title do they want, but why do they want it? And the resume gives you an opportunity to say that you would be good at that job, but it doesn't give you the opportunity to say why. What is maybe a class that they took that really inspired them to want to do this type of work? Maybe it's a project that they had. Maybe it was something in an internship that they were able to get. Maybe it was a volunteer experience that really resonated with them and made them passionate about whatever it is that they want to do. So I think it really helps to tell a little bit of a story about yourself. And it also is one of the sections, along with the headline, that the AI on LinkedIn picks up on. So it's good to reiterate there the type of job you're looking for. And then, like I said, the why. And obviously the AI in LinkedIn also picks up the information on the experience section, but the headline and the about section are also crucial spaces as well. When you get down to that experience section, some people have a preference over the bulleted information or the paragraph information. It really doesn't matter either way, just as long as something is in there. So sometimes students, I guess, have heard not to put information in that experience section, to maybe only put like the company name or something like that. No, definitely put some of the information of what you actually did. This can be very similar to what's on your resume, but what you want to do is focus on those transferable skills rather than just the tasks. But think about the things that you do or have done at this position that you can do somewhere else. So thinking about teamwork and collaboration, thinking about customer service and taking the initiative to find the answer. So those would be some of the examples of a transferable skill that a student could have, especially just working at an on-campus job. If they're part of a department and they work there as a student assistant, there's a lot of skills that they're learning in that position that they can then do somewhere else. So thinking about that. Also making sure that if it was a student position, that you do pick Santa Clara University as your employer so that you're tied to the specific company that you worked at. And then in the education section as well, also making sure that you pick Santa Clara University, or if you're in the business school, you can also pick Santa Clara Levy School of Business. Either way, you want to get into that alumni network. And so it's crucial that you pick the correct places. As I mentioned before, links to external projects, you can put those in the experience section, in the education section. Either way, great options. We do also recommend in the education section, not only putting your major, an estimated graduation date, but also the relevant coursework. So you can add any kinds of coursework in there that you've taken that are related to what you want to do next. This is similar to the resume, so we highly recommend that you also put it there. The skills section, frequently this is overlooked And I wouldn't say it's crucial, but I would say that it's helpful. So if you have skills, say you're looking again to go back to maybe the data analyst or a financial analyst, something like that, thinking about your skills with SQL or Tableau, those would be something that you can go ahead and pick, and then you can reorder those. So that sometimes too, students don't know the top 3 things are shown, but you can actually change the order of that, so that when a recruiter or hiring manager is looking at your profile, you can see those top 3 skills are really related to what it is that you want to do. If students don't know which skills to put, that's when I suggest you flip things and take a look at the job description. So really taking a look at, what is the job description for the things that I want to do? What is it asking of me? And if I have those skills, is it showcased on my LinkedIn profile? So sometimes I've found working with students that it's almost easier to start with some job descriptions, because it triggers some ideas for them on what they think that they want to do, and then some of the gaps. So maybe there's a gap in their education, or a gap in some of the things that they're like, well, I can't take that class yet. I'm not going to take that class until I'm a junior and I'm only a sophomore. Well, let's see what we can do to get those skills on your resume. So there's always opportunities, in volunteer work, or working on campus, to sometimes get those skills onto your resume and your LinkedIn profile prior to actually taking the class, if that's a barrier. So for the profile section, I'm going to go ahead and show you through a few things on mine, and then we'll get into the job search strategy, because there's a lot that's in there as well. I'm going to pause for a second in case anyone has questions. Okay. So this is my profile. As I was mentioning here, this is the headlines section there that I recommend you really tailor to what you want to do. So helping students even say actively looking, that's a great option. And then the about section here, I highly recommend also putting some of the things that they're passionate about as well. The skills section that I mentioned is all the way down at the bottom, and it's great to have some. It's not crucial. I also think it's great to have some recommendations. They can be from a faculty, it can be from a summer job, but it's nice to just sort of round out the profile. Again, I wouldn't say that those are crucial, but I would say that they are good add-ons to the profiles. The last thing on the profile section, the connections piece, we do really want to recommend to students that you have over 500 connections. I know that sounds like a lot sometimes when you meet with students and they have 3 connections, but the AI and in LinkedIn really does benefit those who have over 500 connections. So you'd come up as a suggestion for recruiters or hiring managers. You could be a second or third connection to someone. If the more connections you have, the more likely you're going to pop up in those different spaces. So I do recommend that as well. I did get a question in the chat about the pronouns, and yes, definitely feel free to add those. I think that's kind of personal choice, so definitely up to you. And for those students who are graduating soon, when you're taking a look at the contact info, if they might want to consider using a non-SCU email address, because they're going to want to stay in touch and want to make sure that that is really up to date. So picking a Gmail or something like that right off the bat might be a great way to start. So that's primarily what I have on the profiles section. What I wanted to do next was walk through searching for jobs. There are some little tips and tricks. I think before I do that, I did want to note here that the making sure that your profile is public, and you can edit the URL right here. And that's a great way to make this more personal. A lot of times, if you don't do this, it's kind of a weird number. And we do recommend that every student put their LinkedIn profile on their resume. So this is the place to sort of tweak that and make sure that it looks a little bit more personal to you, especially if you have a really common name, then I highly recommend you do that. And as well, make the public profile with the picture public so that if you have a common name, they can still find you for sure. On to job seeking preferences. Here in the settings, I'm going to do this on the slower side because it's something that I think is really important and not very common. So when you are looking for a new position, I went to data privacy here. You're going to the job seeking preferences spot. And this one right here is signal your interest to recruiters at companies you've created job alerts for. That's kind of a mouthful, but the point of this is that when you create job alerts in LinkedIn, which I'll show you in a minute, if you do that from the company's page, so say from Google's page, the recruiters can see that you've done that only if you've turned this on. Now, what's the point of that? The point is that, as I mentioned at the beginning, recruiters pay for extra access on LinkedIn. So they pay for the LinkedIn Lite package or whatever it is that they're calling it these days, which provides them a certain amount of messages. And in those messages, they can message people who are third connections or more. So what that means is that they take note, how likely is it for this person to message me back? So if I'm a recruiter and I'm looking for a data analyst and all these people come up in my list, but I see that someone has created a job alert for the company that I'm recruiting for, I'm much more likely to use one of those special messages for that person than I would someone else. So that's the background there. That would be why I highly recommend turning that on. So back to the profile, what I wanted to do was just give you a quick example. I was doing this yesterday with a student, so I'll just go back to Atlassian. And from the company page, this is what the recruiter would see. I would go to this jobs section, and then I would go ahead and take a look for the job that I was looking for, and then from there, I would set a job alert. And that is what's going to be triggered to the recruiter. So that's what they would know. Now, this does take a fair amount of time, and many students are like, I have to do that for every single company. Well, it will in the long run help. I do recommend that you play around with these filters because otherwise they'll get a lot of emails. But, checking off the company, checking off the location, if that's a matter, and then setting the filter to things that have, once you've gone through it the first time, setting the filter to things that have just been posted in the past 24 hours, then they won't get as many emails from each company. But when they do get that email, they know they need to take action because it really matters. It really is recommended to apply within the first 48 hours of a job being posted. I do have a question in the chat about the free version or the premium version. So personally, I don't really see that much more benefit in the premium version. I have it, but it's not necessary, I don't believe, for students. I think you can do a lot with just the free version. And it can limit the number of messages you send, but I do think the price on the premium version is pretty steep. So I don't feel like it's much of a benefit to our students. So that would be just my personal recommendation. I will show you as well the groups section. So that's also a great option. So when you go into the Santa Clara section, I'll show you this one first. There is a tool called the LinkedIn Alumni tool. So when I just went to Santa Clara University, you can also go to the Santa Clara University Levy School of Business page as well, if you would prefer. And this tab here is the alumni tool. So what that means is that you can see any of these alums and message them directly. So say you want to look at a specific company, then that could be the company name that you would just go ahead and put in. I'll just go ahead and put in Cisco. We have tons of, obviously, of alums that work at Cisco, 2,556. So maybe you want to narrow it down a little bit more. Maybe you want to be in the Bay Area. Maybe you specifically want someone who's doing sales or business development. There's a lot of different options here. Maybe you're interested, let's go into sales. So then you can focus here on the people that pop up. And what we do recommend is that students add a note to their connection request. At this stage in the process, you want to send a very general note. And by that, I mean a note that simply states, I'm looking at expanding my network on LinkedIn. I'm a current Santa Clara student. I see that you're an alum. I would like to connect. So at this stage in the process, you're keeping it very, very generic. At this point is not when you ask for a meeting. It's not when you ask for a referral or anything like that. If the person was to then reply and accept your connection request, that's when you would move to the second step, which is the messaging of the person. So I also recommend that message, which can be a little bit longer, and that is something that the premium version would give you a few more of. But one of the tricks is that if you and this person are in the same group, so if you both join a group, if you look at their profile and they're part of a group and you're like, oh, that sounds like a group I should join. So you can scroll down here and see some of the groups. So say you were going to go ahead and join one of the groups that this person is a part of, then you can message them as many, it doesn't go into your feed or into your number of messages. So if you were to also join the Professional Businesswomen of California group, and then you can go in there and see that network, you'll be able to message them without having to use one of your messages, if that makes sense. Feel free to ask me any questions on the LinkedIn alumni tool. I know I kind of went through that pretty quickly, but I will keep going. The open to work piece. So let me show you that, because that's also something we do recommend that students turn on. So that's going to be here on their profile. Right here underneath their face is going to have this open to work option. So if you are hiring, obviously, as well, we'd love to have you turn that on. But for the students, you're going to add some job titles, you're going to add some locations, types of things you want to do. And then we do recommend you turn this on for all LinkedIn members. So if a student is actively looking for an internship, they don't already have an offer or haven't already accepted an offer, then they would turn this on for all LinkedIn members. It would in turn put this green little banner on their face that says open to work. You would save that. And then as well, what I would recommend, so the open to work banner is going to be here on the picture. On this headline, you would say, again, actively looking for data analyst internship, something like that. So then as soon as you connect to someone, they're going to see that exactly what you're looking for and what the how they can help. And I have heard a number of students who have said, new connections have reached out, and it's really great to have that just right from the start. You can tell exactly what the student is looking for. So I think I covered most of the preferences. The other thing of note, when you get over here into this jobs section, so you can, of course, create job alerts, like a general job alert that's not specific to one company. So that's an option as well. Again, you're going to want to make sure that you toggle through all the different filters, but it is a great option if you don't have just one specific company in mind. But the thing I wanted to note here is this section called interview prep. We do have a tool at the Career Center as well called Big Interview that will help you with interview prep, sort of the mock interview concept. But it's also great for students to know they can practice right here on LinkedIn as well. Some of the really common questions. So you practice it, you take a video of yourself, and then you can actually send that to any of your connections on LinkedIn. You can obviously pick, it doesn't send it out to everyone. You can pick who you'd like to send that to, and they can take a look at it and give you feedback. So I think that's a really nice option as well for students to practice interviews, because obviously once they go through all the hassle of applying to jobs, do all this fun networking piece, then the next step is, how do I prepare for the interview? So that's a great tool that LinkedIn also offers. Perfect. So the informational conversation, I did want to touch on this briefly because I do think that it's an important piece. Once you have found that common person who, ideally works at the company you're interested in working for, even better. If they're in the department that you're, looking for, and you saw the internship, it's very good advice to go ahead and reach out once you've sent that initial connection message. And then the second message would be the follow-up for this kind of conversation. So an informational conversation is really just to get prepared for maybe what it's like to work at that company, to understand a little bit more about a specific career path, because some students have some ideas of what they want to do, but they might not know for sure. A lot of times there's certain things within a department or a division when you have certain type of terminology, and that might come up in an interview. So things like that. It's not a time to ask specifically for a job. It's a time to build your network and really understand what it's like to work at a certain company. So I also like to let students know, reach out, have that message sent, 10, 15 minutes for a Zoom coffee chat. That's what you're trying to focus on. Have some questions ahead of time. I also recommend to students that they use flattery when they put this message out there. Your background seems fascinating. I saw that, you graduated in communications from Santa Clara, and then you moved into marketing at this organization. I would love to hear how you maneuvered that pathway. Those are the types of things that I feel like you get the best return on those messages from. But I do tell students, a lot of people are on LinkedIn for multiple reasons. They might be on LinkedIn for their own job search. So you do have to have a thick skin when you send out those messages. We say sending 20 LinkedIn messages, you might only get 2 replies, 2 conversations out of it. And that's actually a good number. So keeping in mind just your own framing that I know you're spending a lot of time sending these messages, and they are fruitful. The ones that do come back and have those conversations with you usually are the people that are offering and interested in helping. But it's really good to keep in mind that if you send 20 messages and you get 2 replies, that's a win. I spoke on this a little bit, but crafting the message is obviously very important. You do not want to ask for a reference in this message. What you want to do is have a conversation with the person organically, and then at that moment, and after the end of the conversation, that's when the student should ask, is there anyone else in your network that I should speak to? What would be the best way for me to apply if I do see a position posted? Every company has a different process for employee referrals. So it's a great idea to ask the question of them, what's the best way for the student to apply for a position? How can they stand out? And hopefully the alum at that point will give them some information about, or suggestions of, I actually have a special link I could give you, or it doesn't matter at all. You've got to apply online, but maybe I could figure out who the hiring manager is and send an email for you. So trying to keep it open-ended and not so they feel too much pressure, because really what you're trying to do and what we iterate to students over and over again is it's a long journey, and you're making a connection with someone who can help you at multiple points in your life. So you're just at the beginning of that conversation, and you want that conversation to continue. That sort of moves me into the next slide, which are some of the different options. So we've had a few different career fairs or company panels that we've had, and we do obviously recommend that after those events, the students reach out on LinkedIn to the people that they've met, the recruiters or the hiring managers. They might not hear back, but it's always great to still send that message. Thanks for meeting you. It was a great session. I learned all about this or that. Ideally, the more personal it is, the better, meaning they actually were listening to something that that person said and can say that it was meaningful, or even if they took some next steps because of what the person said, then that's more likely to get a reply. I would say, generally speaking, recruiters get tons and tons of LinkedIn messages. So if you are searching for a specific job at a specific company, I would focus more on trying to find the hiring manager or a young alum who works in that department than I would the recruiter. And sometimes that's counterintuitive, because you would think, well, the recruiter's the person that I speak to first, and that's true. But the recruiter gets so many messages just because of their title, they're less likely to read it. And an alum, especially a young alum who was recently in that student's shoes, is more likely to reply to you. So that's something that we also definitely recommend. And then one of the most crucial things is the follow-up. I recommend to students that they have a massive spreadsheet of the different jobs that they've found, the people on LinkedIn that they've found, the conversations that they've had, any little notes or nuggets of information they got from that person, and then circle back around. So at the end of every conversation, they should be asking, is there anyone else in your network that I can talk to? What's the best way to stay in touch? And then if they are offered a conversation with someone else, after that conversation happens, circle back with the first person, say, thank you so much. I spoke to them. It was great. This is some information that I had. So anytime the student actually completes something that someone recommended, I recommend that they go back and let the person know. Maybe there was an article that they were referencing that they read, or there was a book that they were referencing that they read. People love to know that their advice is helpful. And I think it's a great idea to establish that going forward, so it really can be a long-term connection. So that, again, all throughout your life, you can have some of these connections help you with your journey. I'm going to take you quickly onto our website. But as I'm doing that, if anybody has questions, feel free to come off mute or throw them in the chat.
Yeah, Colleen, this is Craig Martin. I have a question.
Hey, Craig.
Hey, how you doing? So I teach Business 70, which is targeted towards incoming business majors as freshmen in the very first quarter. And so their story, by and large, is they don't have a story yet. I mean, they're more trying to build their network than trying to sell themselves in either internship opportunities or employment. So their strategy is probably a little bit different in that regard. Today's focus is on the job search. In fact, I've got Demetria coming into my class at 2:00 today to do an overview for the students, just to get those that aren't on LinkedIn at least get started. But any specific recommendations, maybe we take it offline, but I'm just curious as to any other thoughts on building the network and building the story as opposed to selling it per se.
Yeah, great question. So I think, starting from scratch is just jumping in with LinkedIn. So going ahead and establishing a profile, filling out as many of those sections as possible, and then thinking about who they know. So when you're starting the section, some of the basics the pictures, the banner behind. They might not be able to do this about section, that I totally understand. That sometimes comes with more reflection, but at least filling out some of the experience, which could be from high school, it could be volunteer experience, it could be leadership experience at a club, but getting some information on here is great, just to have a shell. And then from there, it's really the connections. So thinking about the students around them, thinking about those students' parents, thinking about people from high school, people from high school's parents, thinking about their own parents' friends. So I would focus on building these connections as much as possible. And I have had freshmen who spend time doing it, and it turns out really great for them. So it does take some time, because you are connecting with people you don't know. So that is something that can be challenging for freshmen and sophomores. But I think it's an exercise that in the end would pay out. Is that helpful?
Yep, very much. Yeah, that was one specific question, is do I include stuff, from my high school?
Mhm. Yeah. So for LinkedIn and resumes, we recommend that you keep it on pretty much until mid or end of sophomore year if you need it. So some students, hit the ground running freshman year, they join a bunch of clubs, then they're the VP of marketing for the Women in Business Club, and they're going. And they don't necessarily need something from high school, but if they had something in high school that was really impactful, or maybe it had something to do with what they want to do next. So maybe they were part of a sustainability effort, or maybe, some, volunteer work that they did, then we definitely recommend keeping it on at least through sophomore year. And then at that point, our hope is that you've embraced the Santa Clara community, and you've tried to find ways on campus, off campus, to also get involved there. It is really hard for students. I've had meetings with them when they're like, I worked so hard in high school. You mean I have to take off my ACT score and all of my AP classes? Unfortunately, yes, they do. Mostly because it's just not as pertinent. It was really pertinent for getting into Santa Clara and, your freshman, sophomore year. But then after that, it's not necessarily what the employers are going to want to see. They don't have a strong opinion about your ACT score.
Thanks so much.
Yeah. So when I get over to the website, and I think this will help too, Craig, we do have a lot of information on here with some messaging, which I think is also one of the most difficult things for everyone, but also particularly freshmen and sophomores. So we revamped this job prep toolkit this summer. And once you go in there, you'll see this section, the Build Your Professional Network section, and also professional communications. So the professional communications actually gives you some sample messages. So following up with an employer, how to have a career conversation with someone. And I do feel that that's like a roadblock for a lot of students. Like, I found all these people, but then what do I say in that message? So this piece on our website gives a lot of information. We also have this job search checklist, which is great. So like, just to make sure you've got the different profile sections and any sort of like quick overview. I would say that for new students, freshmen and sophomores, it doesn't have to be perfect. They just have to have it. So it doesn't have to be like every section needs to be filled out. It's just really helpful if they at least have one. The other thing that I wanted to mention on here, we have a couple different webinars, and that will really help with kind of some of the information I said, but also if the student wants to take it one step further, hear a little bit more about what's going on. So the LinkedIn Masterclass is what it's called. And I think I just found it on here. So what you're going to want to do is make sure to ask the students if they'd like to do that as well, because that's really helpful to sort of figure out the different pieces. So this class right here is called the LinkedIn Masterclass, and it's actually a feature that the Career Center pays for the students. It's about a $99 value. But the great thing about it is that the student will then get emails about changes and things that happen on LinkedIn. So it's a class that you watch in the moment, but then you can continue to get updated information about things that have changed on LinkedIn or new features, things like that. So that really helps them to stay up to date as well. So not just something in the moment, but also other options. So that's a great option. And then the other thing I wanted to mention, again, on that job prep toolkit was Bronco Exchange. I'm not going to cover that today, but Bronco Exchange is also a really great networking tool, similar to LinkedIn. But if your students aren't already on Bronco Exchange, I also recommend that they go there. The network there is just Santa Clara alums, faculty, staff, some parents who've joined to mentor students. So the profiles look very similar to LinkedIn, but you know that the people have joined there to mentor students, and that's really helpful. The other piece that's really great, which is a new feature on Bronco Exchange, I can show you real quick, actually also is really helpful with career paths. So for you, Craig, and some of those students that still haven't really figured out what they want to do, this is a great option. So Bronco Exchange has just updated to version 2.0, but this whole section is new. So under career here, the career paths piece is an opportunity for students to type in marketing. And then from there, they can see all the different types of marketing jobs, entry-level jobs. And then even once you dig in there, you can get some salary information. You can also get some connections. So these are people who are in our Bronco network, who work in marketing. And then there's also certain jobs. These jobs are going to be curated from Glassdoor and Indeed and things like that. But it will also tell you who you might know that works at that company. And then other similar jobs. So if you start going down the path of like, oh, this seems interesting, it will also give you some other suggestions of skills, similar jobs that might be of interest. And then again, the connection piece is very similar to LinkedIn. So you've got this community, you can type in different searches and find certain people that way. So that is the updates to the job prep toolkit. And I already went into the LinkedIn masterclass. So these are the key takeaways with students who either don't have a LinkedIn at all or are just looking to update it. Definitely making their public profile, make sure that they've got those visibility settings. That job seeking preferences is one that's great once they're actively looking for a role. 100% they must have a profile picture, and personalizing your URL. Those are really great ways to make your profile easy to find. Next step would be asking the students to watch that LinkedIn masterclass because there's some great information in there. And then obviously feel free to schedule an appointment with any of us on the career development team. We do LinkedIn reviews all day long, every day. So happy to see the students, to give a quick overview, give our tips and tricks, anything like that. Happy to also do that. So I will take any other questions at this point. Feel free to come off mute or put anything you'd like into the chat. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. Thanks everyone for coming, but feel free to stay on if you have any other side questions as well.